Leo was the lead systems architect for Nexus Cloud, a multi-million-dollar data firm. While the sales team wore expensive suits and took long lunches, Leo lived in the basement server room. He knew every line of code, every cooling fan, and every security bypass in the building. He was the invisible engine that kept the company running. For 7 years, he hadn't taken a single sick day. He was the only person who knew how to manage the legacy core, the ancient fragile server that held all the company's client contracts. Leo didn't mind the lack of recognition. He loved the machines. He believed that as long as the servers were humming, his job was safe. He was wrong. In the corporate world, logic often takes a back seat to bloodlines. Leo was about to learn that being indispensable doesn't mean you're invincible. He walked into work on Monday morning, carrying a fresh cup of coffee, unaware that his login credentials had already been marked for deletion. The machines were ready for him, but the humans were planning a coup. The CEO, Mr. Sterling, was a man who valued image over substance. He walked into Leo's server room, followed by a young man in a poorly fitted suit who looked like he'd never seen a motherboard in his life. "Leo, meet Kyle," Sterling said with a fake smile. "Kyle just graduated with a degree in marketing, and he's looking to pivot into tech management. I want you to show him the ropes." Leo looked at Kyle, who was busy checking his hair in the reflection of a high-end server rack. Kyle didn't ask about data encryption or server uptime. His first question was, "Where's the best place to take a nap around here?" Leo felt a pit in his stomach. He spent the week trying to teach Kyle the basics, but the young man was more interested in his phone than the legacy core. Kyle was a disaster waiting to happen, but he had the one thing Leo didn't: the CEO's last name. On Friday afternoon, Leo was called to the penthouse office. He expected a thank you for training the new guy. Instead, he found a severance package waiting on the desk. "We're streamlining, Leo," Sterling said, refusing to look him in the eye. "Kyle is going to take over the department. He's got fresh ideas and a modern vision." Leo was stunned. Kyle doesn't know the difference between a router and a toaster. If the legacy core goes down, he won't know how to reboot it. Sterling just waved his hand dismissively. "It's just computers, Leo. How hard can it be? Security will walk you out." Leo realized he was being replaced by a man who thought the cloud was literally in the sky. He felt the hot sting of betrayal. He had built this infrastructure from nothing, and now it was being handed to a spoiled kid as a playground. The security guards were aggressive. They didn't even let Leo go back to his desk to get his favorite mechanical keyboard. They watched him like a criminal as he packed his bag. As he was being led to the elevator, Leo saw Kyle sitting in his chair, feet up on the desk, tossing a stress ball against the wall. Kyle gave him a mocking salute. "Don't worry, old man. I've got it from here," Kyle joked. What Kyle and Sterling didn't realize was that Leo's control wasn't just a job title. It was literal. The entire network was built on a series of custom scripts that required a pulse check every 24 hours. If Leo didn't manually enter a specific code, the servers would enter ghost mode. It was a safety feature Leo had installed years ago to prevent hacker takeovers. Without Leo, the clock was officially ticking. Leo sat in his apartment, staring at his personal laptop. He had a read-only monitor of the company's traffic. It was Saturday morning, and the glitches were already starting. Kyle had tried to install a fancy new interface on the main server, but he had accidentally deleted the routing tables. The company's website began to flicker. Clients trying to log in were met with error 404 messages. From his bedroom, Leo could see the digital chaos unfolding. He could have fixed it in 10 seconds, but he wasn't an employee anymore. He made a sandwich and watched the traffic drop. He wasn't being petty. He was simply letting the fresh vision take its course. Sterling had fired the pilot while the plane was at 30,000 feet. Now, the passengers were starting to scream. By Sunday night, the Nexus Cloud was in a total blackout. The main website was down, and the internal email system had collapsed. Mr. Sterling's private cell phone number appeared on Leo's screen at 11 p.m. Leo let it ring. It rang 5 more times before a text message appeared. "Leo, the system is acting up. Kyle says it's a virus you left behind. Fix it now or I'll call the police." Leo laughed. It wasn't a virus. It was just a system that hadn't been fed. He replied with a simple message. "I'm no longer authorized to access the servers per your security escort. Please refer all technical issues to your new manager, Kyle." He turned his phone off and went to sleep. It was the best night of rest he'd had in 7 years. Monday morning was a bloodbath. Nexus Cloud's biggest client, a national bank, couldn't access their data. They were threatening to sue for millions. Sterling and Kyle were trapped in the server room, surrounded by blinking red lights. Kyle was frantically Googling how to fix a server, but the internet in the building was down too. They had effectively locked themselves out of their own house. The ghost mode had kicked in. The servers were now encrypted with a 256-bit key that only Leo possessed. The company wasn't just down, it was a brick. Sterling realized that without Leo, the company's net worth was exactly zero. He had traded a master engineer for a nephew who couldn't even manage a password reset. Sterling showed up at Leo's apartment in person. He looked like he hadn't slept in 48 hours. "Leo, I'll give you your job back. Double the salary. Just come back and fix the legacy core." Leo stood in his doorway, leaning against the frame. "I don't want my job back, Mr. Sterling. I want a consulting fee. My rate is now $50,000 per hour, with a 10-hour minimum paid up front." Sterling gasped. "That's extortion." Leo shrugged. "No, that's modern vision. You fired the only person who knew how the engine worked. Now the engine is dead. You decide what it's worth to save the bank contract." Sterling's hands shook as he pulled out his checkbook. He had no choice. The bank was calling every 5 minutes, and the lawsuits were being drafted. Leo walked back into the office like a ghost. The staff, who had been sitting in the dark for 2 days, nearly cheered when they saw him. He didn't go to the penthouse. He went straight to the basement. Kyle was still there, sweating and crying. "It won't let me in," Kyle wailed. "The screen is just purple." Leo didn't even look at him. He pushed Kyle out of the chair and sat down. He typed in a single 30-character command. The purple screen vanished. The cooling fans roared to life. The red lights turned a steady, peaceful green. In 30 seconds, the Nexus Cloud was back online. The bank's data flowed again. The emails flooded in. The engine was humming. Leo spent the next 5 hours cleaning the system. He didn't just fix the glitch. He documented every single mistake Kyle had made. He created a report that showed how Kyle had almost permanently deleted the company's entire history in just 48 hours. He printed 10 copies and handed them to every board member as they arrived for an emergency meeting. Sterling tried to stop him, but Leo was a consultant now. He didn't answer to the CEO. He showed the board that the restructuring had almost led to a total federal investigation for data negligence. The board members, who cared more about their money than Sterling's family ties, looked at Kyle with pure disgust. The Nephew era was about to come to a very sudden, very public end. The emergency meeting was short. The board members were furious that Sterling had risked their fortunes for a family favor. They demanded Kyle's immediate resignation. Kyle tried to argue that it was too much pressure, but no one was listening. He was escorted out by the same security guards who had kicked Leo out a week earlier. This time, there was no mocking salute. Kyle looked like a humiliated child. The board then turned their sights on Sterling. They stripped him of his hiring and firing powers and placed him on a performance improvement plan. The CEO was now a figurehead with no actual power. The man who tried to play God with Leo's career was now a servant to his own board. Leo finished his 10 hours of work. He had made $500,000 in a single day. He packed his mechanical keyboard and prepared to leave. "Where are you going?" Sterling asked, sounding defeated. "The servers still need monitoring." Leo smiled. "I'm a consultant, remember? My work here is done. If you want a full-time architect, you'll have to find one. But I hear they're hard to find on such short notice." Leo walked out the front doors, the sun shining on his face. He didn't need the job, and he didn't need the stress. He had proven his point. He had controlled the servers, but more importantly, he had controlled his own destiny. 2 weeks later, the board reached out to Leo with a new proposal. They didn't want him as an employee. They wanted to buy his custom scripts. They realized the pulse check system was actually the best security they'd ever seen. They offered him $5 million for the intellectual property rights. Leo realized that by firing him, Sterling had inadvertently helped him discover the true value of his own code. He agreed to the sale, but with one condition. The basement server room was to be renamed the Leo Miller Technical Wing, and no relatives of the CEO were ever allowed inside. The board agreed instantly. Nexus Cloud recovered, but it was never the same for Sterling. He eventually resigned in disgrace a few months later. Kyle went back to living in his parents' basement, telling everyone who would listen that he was too visionary for the tech world. Leo used his millions to start his own firm, a company where talent always beat nepotism. He hired the best engineers he knew, and he gave them all a stake in the company. He became a legend in the tech world, known as the man who turned the lights out on a bad boss. Years later, Leo was sitting on a beach, working on a new project. His phone gave a small notification. It was an automated ping from the old Nexus cloud system. Even though he didn't own it anymore, a small piece of his code still lived in the legacy core. It was a reminder that managers come and go, and CEOs can be replaced, but the people who build the world are the ones who truly own it. Leo closed his laptop and looked at the ocean. The servers were humming somewhere, and for once, he wasn't the one who had to fix them. Even though Leo was gone, the Leo Miller wing of Nexus Cloud became a sacred space for the new IT team. They kept his original scripts running as a tribute. Whenever a new manager tried to push the engineers around, the senior techs would just point to the name on the wall. "Remember the guy who controlled the servers," they would say. It became a warning to every executive. Don't fire the people who know how the world works. The story of the nephew and the server became a viral case study in business schools. It taught a new generation of leaders that loyalty and skill are worth more than any family connection. Leo would sometimes see his own story on YouTube, with titles like "Boss Fired Tech Genius," instantly regrets it. He would just smile and hit the like button. He knew the truth was even better than the stories. He had survived the betrayal, and in the end, he was the one who had the last laugh. Leo didn't just become rich. He became a hero for underdogs everywhere. He started a foundation that provided free coding classes for people from low-income backgrounds. He wanted to make sure that the Leos of the future had the tools to protect themselves from the Sterlings of the world. He realized that power doesn't come from a title. It comes from what you can do with your hands and your mind. The story ends with a visit to the old server room. The air is cold, the lights are blue, and the sound of the fans is a constant soothing drone. In the corner, the legacy core still sits, a sturdy metal box that once held the fate of a company. On its side, someone had scratched a small message in the metal. Leo was here. It was a reminder that no matter how much technology changes, the humans behind it are the ones who matter. Every time a website loads perfectly or a bank transfer goes through without a hitch, there is a Leo somewhere making it happen. Most people never see them. Most people never thank them. But the Leos of the world don't need the thanks. They have the satisfaction of knowing that they are the ones holding the keys to the kingdom. Kyle tried to start his own tech company, but it failed within 3 months. He couldn't even set up the office Wi-Fi. He realized too late that a degree in marketing doesn't help when the hardware is broken. He ended up working as a junior sales rep for a company that Leo eventually bought. The irony was perfect. Sterling eventually ran into Leo at a tech gala. Sterling was looking for a job, and Leo was the one holding the interviews. Leo was professional and polite. He didn't bring up the past. He just asked Sterling one question. "Do you know how to reboot a server?" Sterling looked at the floor and walked away. Leo's new firm became the gold standard for tech culture. No nepotism, no office politics, just pure engineering excellence. He built a company that couldn't be destroyed by a single bad decision. He realized that a modern vision isn't about hiring your family. It's about respecting your workers. The last chapter of Leo's career was his best. He retired early, leaving his company in the hands of the engineers he had trained. He knew the servers were in good hands. He didn't need to check the pulse anymore. He had built something that would outlast him. The story concludes with the image of Leo's original mechanical keyboard. It sits in a glass case in the lobby of his new headquarters. It's a symbol for every worker who has ever felt invisible. It says that you might be in the basement today, but if you control the servers, you control the world. The lights are green. The connection is stable. The end.